This is the Money Hour with your host, Tina Mitchell, on Alternative Talk, AM 1150. Now, back to the show with local mortgage and finance expert, Tina Mitchell.
Well, welcome back to the Money Hour with your host and mortgage expert, Tina Mitchell, right here on 1150 AM KKNW, the Saturday, April 4th show. I bring into the studio each week the best of the best experts in our local market on everything regarding money, and I'm here to help you in today's economy. If you're hearing my show at a different time or day, you're listening to a rebroadcast, but you can always call the show at 1-855-400-1150 or online at themoneyhour.com. Again, that's 1-855-400-1150 or online at themoneyhour.com. And the rest of the show is for one guest. Unlike usually I'm interviewing and talking with three guests, but Andy is special. He spends a lot of time visiting me here in the studio to help my listeners, all of you, when it comes to Social Security, Medicare and Medicaid. And whether you're reaching that retirement age or the age that you're starting to think about this, it doesn't matter, because we all have parents, we have grandparents, and we have loved ones that are getting to this next stage in life. And it's really important, just like everything else regarding your money, it's all about preparation, planning, and education, and really having the experts that can help you through that process. So I'm just so excited. Andy, thank you for coming back in the studio.
Thank you, Tina. It's great to be here.
And if I had us live on video, you could actually see birthday cakes, balloons.
Happy birthday.
Andy,
to
birthday.
me.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Andy.
Happy birthday to me.
Woohoo!
Thank you. Yeah.
So, Andy, celebrating your birthday, that is awesome. And spending time in studio is awesome. So I want to give my listeners a little background of who you are. Andy Landis is our Social Security guru. He is an author of Social Security, The Inside Story, called the Social Security Bible, available on Amazon.com. So I encourage all of you to go on to Amazon.com. And again, you know somebody that can benefit from reading Andy's book and getting that inside story. Andy travels the United States making sense of Social Security. Sometimes it's a little hard to do that. He has worked with pre-retirees and retirees for over 35 years.
Oh my gosh, I'm getting old.
I didn't tell him how old you were. A little bit older than I am, Andy.
Yeah. No, I've been at this for 38 years. It's crazy.
38 years? I need to update the bio I've got.
Oh,
have I known you for that long?
Notice it says over 35.
Oh, okay.
It'll be good for a long time.
All righty. So first at Social Security, then at Boeing, AARP, Weyerhaeuser, and now as a speaker, author, and consultant. He is a regular blogger for the Wall Street Journal Market Watch website, and he gets rave reviews from the public and financial professionals because he makes Social Security clear and fun. And we're going to talk about that. I don't want to get off the bio here, but boy, that's really hard to make Social Security clear and fun. Those are two difficult things. He lives in Seattle with Kay, keyboards, camper, computers, cars, and sometimes kids. We're happy to have you, Andy, again here as an expert on Social Security and with a little twist with highways and byways. So let's go ahead and get right into it. And what do you mean by Social Security highways?
Well, as a car guy, this makes sense to me that Social Security's main highway would be the basic benefits for a worker and their spouse. Okay. Although sometimes I run into people that go, what, my spouse can get Social Security too? So those are the basic highways, the main roads. They're on most people's maps, and people expect those payments. So that's kind of like, okay, everybody rides this freeway, right?
Exactly.
Worker and spouse benefits.
So talking about the highways, what about the byways?
Well, there's a whole bunch of side roads to Social Security that are less well known. And one that's really important is divorced spouse benefit. So if you have an ex and you were married at least 10 years, you can file for Social Security on their work record, and that can be a profit for you. There's benefits for children. So when you get on Social Security, they'll ask, do you have any children in high school age or younger? Or if they're older than that, are they totally disabled? And those kids can get Social Security on your work record. Disability benefits, there's two kinds of benefits for people mid-career. Heaven forbid this should happen, but if you become disabled while you're a worker, you get Social Security. Or worst of all, if you pass away while you're a worker and leave dependents, Social Security will pay them.
Okay.
So it's kind of like life insurance, disability insurance, and retirement benefits all rolled into one. It's pretty awesome.
Got it. So how important is it, Andy, to know the side roads?
It's really important because all the time when I'm out doing seminars, I run into people that had no clue that they could go on one of these side roads and maybe get more money. Maybe it's a useful detour to go on one of these side roads instead of your own. So you're
give
looking
me an example.
Okay. For example, I ran into somebody that didn't know their own spouse could get Social Security payments. They were counting on Social Security for the worker. I guess it was a he who had most of the income in the family, and was clueless that there's additional money. It changed his retirement plan. And now I'm running into more and more boomers who are reaching retirement age, but they still have kids. Maybe because they had them late in life, maybe they're adopted, maybe they married into the family, they're stepkids, whatever. If you have kids that are high school age or younger, they're going to get Social Security when you sign up. And that completely changes their retirement picture. If you can bring an extra $1,000 or $1,500 a month in while the kids are still, underage. So there's different roads to explore. And a new word that I've recently made up is dually. When I worked at Social Security, we talked about people who were dually eligible, like I'm eligible as a worker and a spouse, or a worker and an ex-spouse, or a worker and a widower, for example. Well, that makes you a dually, which means you have at least 2 different pathways to take on your Social Security. And depending on which one you take first and which one you take second, you can get a lot more money out of the system. So it's really important to know and to explore these side roads.
Because the system's not going to come back and tell you that you've taken the wrong road.
They can't always do that. They can tell you, hey, you could do this or you could do that, but they can't tell you which one is best.
Got it. So are there other byways that my listeners should know about, Andy?
Yeah, then there's the real side roads. I call them off-road excursions.
Okay, I like this road trip that we're going on.
It works for me. You drive an interesting car. You're into it too.
Yeah, you make Social Security fun.
Well, I've got the most boring topic in the world, let's face it. So you got to have a little fun with it. So the first one I call the U-turn. Here we go with an extended metaphor.
Okay.
So the U-turn, what's a U-turn do? It takes you back to your starting point. It goes back where you were. Well, you can do that with your Social Security. You can sign up for Social Security and then later decide that wasn't the best pathway for me. And what you do then is you do a U-turn, or like an undo button on your computer. You withdraw the claim. You got to repay the money you got, and then it's just like you never filed.
Oh, wow.
Which is awesome. For example, I had a gentleman in Los Angeles that contacted me, and he reached 66, and he signed up for his Social Security. And 2 months later, he finds out, oh, I could have gotten ex-spouse benefits. And that would have been a better byway for me to be on, get ex-spouse benefits for a few years, and then steer back onto the main highway of my own benefits for more money.
Okay, wow.
So what he had to do was withdraw his own claim, because that was in the way.
Okay.
Withdraw that, pay back the money, make a U-turn back to the beginning, sign up as an ex-spouse. 4 years later, he'll sign up on his own. He'll get 32% more money.
So is there any time limit to how far back that you can go backwards and pay back and start getting back on the right road?
That's a little complicated. The rule for the last 4 years has been you can only do it in the first 12 months. Okay. So let's go with that. The rules are in flux right now.
But you said 4 years.
For the last 4 years, you've been allowed to do it only in the first 12 months.
Oh, okay.
And then there was some publication that said that 12-month rule is going away, so you could do it years later. However, that's not in effect yet. So make sure if you're outside the first 12 months of Social Security, check with Social Security because the rules are changing right now.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Andy, what about any other byways?
Well, there's a second one that's probably the most powerful tool in the Social Security toolbox.
Okay.
That's the ability to suspend your payments from full retirement age, which right now is 66, to 70. Now, I call it red light, green light. Do you remember playing this when you were a kid?
I do, but I remember red light, green light, but I'm trying to remember. I guess red light means that you have to stop, and green light you can go.
Yeah, I think you had to freeze or something, or you were out. Yeah, something like that.
It's coming back.
Well, you can do that with your Social Security. You can do a red light for a while and then give it a green light and make it start again.
Okay.
So you can suspend any or all payments from your full retirement age up to age 70. And any payment that you suspend means that when you start them again, you're going to get more money per month.
So explain that, Andy.
So let's say I stop my payments for a year from 66 to 70.
Okay.
Or excuse me, from 66 to 67.
Okay.
And at 67, I start them up again. They start up at 8% more money per month.
Really?
So if I have some way, let's say I get a job.
Yes.
Don't need the Social Security right now.
Yep.
And then a year later, I move on.
Okay.
Don't have the job anymore. Start them up at a higher rate.
Yeah. Wow.
And you could do that. The extreme case would be putting the red light on your Social Security all 4 years from 66 to 70.
Okay.
And when you start them up, it's 8% a year times 4 years. That's 32% increase.
Wow. Wow.
So it's huge. And while they're stopped, your spouse can still get a payment on your record.
Okay.
So I could be, say, working full time. I could suspend my payments on Social Security. Meanwhile, my spouse can get up to a 50% payment, even though I'm working and even though my payments are stopped. Spousal payments are coming in. It's just like free money. It's unbelievable. So definitely explore that if you're anywhere from 66 to 70.
Not that we need to talk with you, Andy, about Social Security yet, because Dave is only 56. But I forgot to tell you, he just retired on the 31st. So
No
he's
way,
done.
really?
Nope, he's done.
Oh, congratulations
yeah, I know.
to him.
Who gets to
Cool.
retire at 56, Dave?
He put in his time. He put in
did.
extra.
He worked very hard. Yes,
Yep.
I should say that because I know his mom listens to the show all the time. Hi, Mom. So what
Hi,
about
Mom.
and she now Dave really has a lot of time for things that are important and taking care of our parents and all these things that we want to be able to do. So
Good.
what's the third off-road?
I call it the dually detour. If you
Okay.
are a dually, you're eligible two different ways, like spouse, or you could take the detour route first and then come back to the main road later.
Okay.
And what you're doing is getting some money coming in now, but later when you get back on the main track of your own Social Security, like I was saying, it's at a higher level. So
Yeah.
you get a little bit of money coming
Interesting.
in now. And you wouldn't believe the abilities that you have. We'll talk about that after the break.
Okay,
the
perfect.
Things you can do with
so
that.
before we do take it to break, Andy, I want you to, how can my listeners learn more about the Byways and see if they can profit from them?
You know, the first stop for any kind of Social Security planning is go on the Social Security website at ssa.gov and get a My Social Security account started. Yeah, you got to make a username and a password and all that. Well, okay, we do that for our banks and everybody else. You input your data that you get from that into one or more online calculators you can get for free. And the ones I really like, just do a computer search for Social Security calculators by AARP, Financial Engines, or T. Rowe Price also has a good one. So those are
Perfect.
three great tools.
Wonderful. Andy, thank you so much. And coming up next in the Money Hour, Andy's not going anywhere. Social Security and costly mistakes that you don't want to make. The best tools for planning. Is it going away? Everything about Social Security that you need to know. Andy Landis, nationally known author, speaker, and consultant, right here on 1150 AM KKNW after this short break.
This is the Money Hour with your host, Tina Mitchell, on Alternative Talk, AM 1150. Now, back to the show with local mortgage and finance expert, Tina Mitchell.
Welcome back to the Money Hour with your host and mortgage expert, Tina Mitchell, right here on 1150 AM KKNW, the Saturday 4th, April 4th show. Each week, I share expert advice and inside knowledge on how today's events in our local economy can affect your money. If you're listening to my show at a different time or day, you're listening to a rebroadcast to talk to myself or the amazing guest I have in studio today, you can call 1-855-400-1150. Again, 1-855-400-1150 or online at themoneyhour.com. In studio, continued conversation with Andy Landis, a nationally known author, speaker, and consultant. So, Andy, we were talking about Social Security and we were talking about the byways and the highways and all the different roads that you can take and just a really fun spin to put on Social Security. So if you actually did not hear the last conversation I had with Andy, you definitely will want to go to themoneyhour.com and put in Andy's name and you can pull up all of the conversations that I've had with him way back to the beginning of the show. But let's go ahead and move over to Medicare, Andy. And when should someone apply for Medicare? Are there any exceptions to that? How do they do it? Let's talk a little bit about that.
Two key dates. One is when you turn 65. That's
Okay.
when Medicare age kicks in. So most people everyone should at least contact Social Security and say, what do I do with my Medicare just before you turn 65, like a month or two before.
Okay.
Many people should apply at 65. There's a big exception. And the big exception is if you have health insurance from an employer, either your work or your spouse's, you can postpone the Medicare until that insurance ends.
So that's the only exception.
Yeah, like let's say you're going to retire or your spouse is going to retire when you're 68. You postpone the Medicare. You apply for it at 68.
Okay.
And at that point, Social Security says, dude, you were supposed to apply at 65. And you say, it's not a problem because I have insurance from work. And they waive all the late fees for coming in late.
Okay.
So 65, it's key to contact Social Security then to make sure that your work fits their definition.
Got it. And then how do they do it? How do my listeners apply for Medicare? Two
ways. One would be to contact Social Security by phone, would be easier than going into an office. So you can call them at 800-SSA-1213.
Okay.
And they're open from 7 in the morning to 7 at night. And you can be on hold for quite a while if you do that.
Okay.
Or it just takes a minute to apply for Medicare online. So you could go to ssa.gov and apply for Medicare right there on their website.
Perfect.
Just takes a few minutes.
And Andy, if a listener has Medicare, is it what type of additional insurance should they be getting, if any?
Everyone should look at getting additional insurance on top of their Medicare.
And why? And I know that's very important. But why do you give that advice?
The reason it's important is Medicare will cover, I think it's something like 70% of your bills.
Okay.
They pay 80% of their allowed bills.
Okay.
And that's some percentage of the total bill. Here's the kicker. If I go to the doctor and I got to pay $20 because Medicare didn't cover it all, who cares? It's not a big deal. But if I go to the doctor and I need open heart surgery and it's going to cost hundreds of thousands of dollars, and I got to pay 20 to 35% of that out of pocket.
Wow.
And that could happen over and over. There's no Medicare out-of-pocket limits, either lifetime limits or annual limits. So it's really important that you have some insurance to pick up the stuff Medicare doesn't cover.
Yeah, because you could be in big trouble in the retirement years with your finances without.
For sure.
Yep.
So we were doing the pathways thing before. There's 3 pathways to get Medicare supplement insurance.
Okay.
One is maybe your company or union offers something. Like if you're in the military, you might have TRICARE for life. Or if you worked for Boeing, there might be health insurance going on into, post 65.
Okay.
So first, check with your employer or union.
Okay.
Second, and the most popular way, is to get a Medigap policy. And if you get a Medigap, it's designed just to fill gaps in Medicare. Very
just
cool.
Like the name.
Just like the name.
Yep.
And you probably want to look at a Part D prescription drug coverage plan also. So now you got 3 different insurance companies.
Wow.
The third pathway, it's kind of new and evolving. It's called Medicare Advantage. They've been around for a long time, but they've changed in the last 5 years or so. So what you're doing is buying an insurance plan that replaces all your Medicare coverage, and all your claims go to this private insurance plan.
Okay.
For example, Group Health, Primera, Regents, all these companies offer Advantage plans, and then all your dealings are with that one company. All your claims go there, any kind of appeals you have go there, and some of them are free. So you pay for your Medicare, which is only like $104.90 per month per person for most people. So I'm paying about $100 a month for my Medicare, and I can get free additional insurance to fill the gaps in Medicare by going to an Advantage plan. So I'll tell you what, right now I'm paying $551 a month for my health insurance because I'm self-employed.
Yes.
So I'm on an individual plan. And when I go on Medicare in exactly 1 year from today,
congratulations.
Thank you. My total insurance bill might be anywhere from $100 to $300. I'll be saving hundreds of dollars a month when I go on Medicare. It's awesome.
Okay, that's great. And what about the stability of Medicare?
It's much better than people think.
Okay.
There's always a drop-dead date on Medicare where Medicare Part A, which covers hospital bills, will run out of money. Part B will not run out of money because by law, the government has to pay 3/4 of the cost of that, and the retirees pay the other quarter. So that's there forever. But Part A has a trust fund that slowly gets drained. Right now, I believe the drop-dead date for Medicare is 2024.
Wow.
And I don't want people
right
to
around
worry
the corner.
about that because I've been in this business for 38 years.
And there's always
that's
been that.
Probably the longest period of solvency
well, that's
I've
good
ever
to know.
seen.
That's good to know.
Yeah, it's in pretty good shape.
Good. So what about getting more information on Medicare or supplemental insurance?
2 resources. One, go to Medicare.gov. They have an awesome website. It has a problem that's similar to what the problem is on the Social Security website. Too much information.
Exactly.
So a great place to go if you're in Washington State is look up Washington State SHIBA. Just do a computer search. SHIBA, SHIBA, Statewide Health Insurance Benefits Advisors. They have an 800 number. They have an awesome website that has all kinds of state-specific information, including every kind of Medicare additional insurance you can buy with the price tag attached.
Nice.
All your shopping is in one place.
Wow, that's awesome.
You can call them up and they'll help you through the decisions in person. They have trained volunteers that'll even meet with you to help you make the decisions. So there's a lot of help available.
Resource.
Yeah, don't be alone.
Okay.
But there's also private brokers. You can go and talk to a Medicare insurance broker and they can guide you too.
Perfect. So what about weakness with Medicare? What are their weakness?
As a 64-year-old, one weakness is they don't kick in until 65. So there's one. I wish everybody could get it, but it's not the way it works. It can be kind of expensive for some people. If you're high income, really high income, like $300,000 a year, then you're going to pay a whopping $300 for your Medicare instead of $100. So is that a weakness? Still a good deal, you know?
Exactly.
Probably the biggest weakness is it doesn't cover everything, and that means some of the responsibility comes to you to fill those gaps in Medicare. And you don't want to make a mistake on that.
So what are some of those things that it does not cover?
Well, for example, let's say I've got a $100,000 medical bill, which these days would actually be small potatoes.
Exactly. Yeah. That's not much of anything.
The Medicare allowable on that might be less than $100,000, and they only pay 80% of the allowable. So I could be out $30,000 on this one bill. And then what if it's a bill that happens all the time, like a year of chemo or a series of surgeries or something like that? That's probably the biggest weakness. All of these gaps that I talk about would be filled if you got a Medigap policy or a Medicare Advantage plan. So I don't want you to panic on that. Everybody just fills those gaps by getting additional insurance, and it's not too expensive to do that. Okay.
So any other advice when it comes to Medicare before I take us to commercial, Andy?
Don't forget to contact Social Security just before you turn 65, 2 to 3 months early. Call Social Security, visit them, and find out if you should take Medicare now at 65 or if you can safely postpone it without late fees. You do not want to get those late fees. And also make sure you learn about the supplements. And a great way to do that is right on the Insurance Commissioner of the State of Washington's website, SHIBA, SHIBA, Washington State.
Perfect. So coming up next in the Money Hour, we're going to stick here with Andy for the entire show. What steps do you need to take and plan for Social Security? Andy Landis, nationally known author, speaker, and consultant. Right here with me on 1150 AM at KKNW after the short break.
This is the Money Hour with your host, Tina Mitchell, on Alternative Talk, AM 1150. Now, back to the show with local mortgage and finance expert, Tina Mitchell.
Welcome back to the Money Hour with your host and mortgage expert, Tina Mitchell, right here on 1150 AM KKNW, the Saturday, April 4th show. I'm dedicated to all of my listeners, providing you with the tools needed to make informed decisions on matters when it affects your money. If you're hearing my show at a different time or day, you're listening to a rebroadcast, you can call the show at 1-855-400-1150 or online at themoneyhour.com. And in studio for the entire show today, I've had Andy Landis, nationally known author, speaker, and consultant. Andy, thank you for hanging out with me for the entire show today.
Thank you, Tina.
And next, I want to talk with Andy about the mysteries of Social Security law. So, sounds like it could be an exciting topic for us. So, let's go ahead and talk about how you would describe Social Security in a nutshell when we're talking about Social Security mysteries in law.
You know, you were talking about title insurance earlier today.
Yep.
When it comes to home purchase. Social Security is paycheck insurance. It kicks in if something happens to your paycheck. Specifically, it pays if your paycheck is interrupted because of retirement, disability, or death. Heaven forbid. The retirement's the fun one there. Because think about it. You pay for it out of your paycheck. And then if your paycheck stops, that's when Social Security can pay.
Yeah.
So it's basically insurance on your paycheck. And get this, you won't believe this, but it is the largest source of retirement income. It's bigger than savings. It's bigger than pensions.
It's kind of scary and sad.
It is scary and sad. And about half of people, it's 90% or more of their income.
Wow.
You do not want that to happen, people.
Yeah.
You want to do some saving and some preparation so Social Security isn't all you have.
Yeah, geez. And so is Social Security an entitlement program?
Technically, you know, you use that term and it's become kind of a pejorative term, kind of a cuss word. It's an entitlement.
Yeah.
So it is and it isn't. Technically, it's called an entitlement program. You talked about title insurance.
Yes.
You receive title to your Social Security. It is your property legally once your claim is approved.
Okay.
So yes, it technically, if I was a lawyer, I'd say it's an entitlement.
Okay.
What it isn't is an entitlement like people think of entitlements. It's not a welfare payment.
Okay.
It's not something that's based on need.
Yeah.
You earned it. You paid for it and you earned it. Just like if you bought insurance and then the car insurance people have to pay you if you have an accident.
Got it.
Yeah, so technically it's an entitlement, but it's not a welfare entitlement.
So what about opting out of Social Security? Can you do that, and why would you?
Most people cannot. It's a mandatory program. There are a couple of people that can get out of it. Well, first of all, if you work for a public entity, for example, state of California, all the workers that work for the state of California are not in the Social Security program. They're in an alternative that's similar that's run by California. So some public employees are outside the system, especially fire and police. Every once in a while, I run into a clergy person that has opted out. They have an option to opt out of Social Security. I don't know why, but
yeah.
And most of the clergy people I've talked to, maybe they opted out for religious reasons, for reasons of conscience.
Okay.
But you know what? Most of the people that I talk to when they get to retirement age wish they had opted in instead of out.
Of course, yeah. So, Andy, what about spouse payments? Who can get that? How does Social Security define marriage?
That's in flux right now because every state is defining marriage differently. With same-sex marriage coming in and so on. Well, Social Security just follows the state law. So the marital relationship that you have has to be legally recognized by one of the U.S. states, and then Social Security will recognize it.
Only one of them?
Well, yeah. For example, there's something like, I believe there's 7 states that recognize common law marriage, where there was no ceremonial marriage, but you've told everybody you're married.
Exactly.
And you've done that for, I believe it's 7 years. Then that is a legal marriage at Social Security, even if you don't live in that state anymore.
I didn't realize that. Wow.
It's so interesting. And on same sex, it's a little complicated right now because it's in flux.
Okay.
The way Social Security is dealing with it is if your marriage was legally performed in a state that recognizes that marriage.
Okay, like Washington State.
Like Washington. And you reside in such a state, Social Security will recognize it.
You have to reside in that state.
For example, I get married to a same-sex partner in Washington, but move to Texas, they don't recognize same-sex, at least last I heard. Every state's different now. So that's the way Social Security is dealing with it.
But if you move to another state that does recognize it, then you're okay. So if you were married in Washington State and you move to another state that does recognize same-sex marriage, then you're still eligible.
Correct. And right now, for the last year or two since the Supreme Court decision, there's new rules coming out of Social Security all the time. For example, what if my same-sex partner dies? Can I get widow's payments on that record?
And why wouldn't you
What if I live in a state that doesn't recognize that at the time of death? Or what if my legal residence was in a state that recognizes, but the death was in another,
Got it.
You can imagine the lawyers are just having a blast with this.
I bet. What about third-party payment on Social Security? Can you talk a little bit about that, Andy?
Yeah, Social Security your Social Security can be paid to a third party in 2 situations.
Okay.
First of all, if you are legally incompetent, and that means it was court ordered. For example, if I have a mental disability and a court says you can't handle money, it has to be paid to your spouse or your parent or something. That's a situation.
Okay.
And included in that would be minors. Minors, by definition, are legally incompetent. So unless you're an gets complicated. Unless you're an emancipated minor, your payments will go to your parent.
Yes.
Or another person.
Okay.
Now, there's another one that's court ordered, but the other one is administrative. This used to be hard when I worked at Social Security, to go to somebody and say, we think that you are having troubles handling money. Your daughter has come to us and said you're not paying your bills, or that you paid the bills to the wrong people. Things are going wrong.
Yeah.
And then we would like to talk to you about having your payments go to your daughter instead of you or some other person.
Makes sense. So
And
what do you do in
make
that? What do you do in that process? I mean, how do you to get that taken care of?
That process is you contact the family physician, first of all, and the doctor makes the decision, yay or nay, you can handle money. You notify the person who gets the payments.
Okay.
And somebody would have already come forward, for example, the daughter, the son, the spouse, and said, they're not handling money very well. And some of the really, it was painful sometimes to talk to people and say, your daughter says you're having troubles handling money.
Yeah.
But most of the time, the person that I was addressing would say, oh, thank goodness I'm having so much trouble.
Yes.
I'd love this to be handled by somebody else.
Yeah, that's
great.
And
then they can do all the business with Social Security for you.
Okay. Let's talk about situations where Social Security could be garnished.
Okay. It can be garnished in some cases. It's free of garnishment in most cases. But, boy, if it's federal, if you owe the federal government money, they can come after the Social Security.
Yeah.
And specifically, if it's direct deposited, they can slurp it right out of that account the last 2 months' worth, I believe it is.
Okay.
So if you owe federal taxes, if you owe crime victims restitution, if you owe debts to other federal agencies, including federally insured student loans,
really,
they can come after your Social Security.
Wow.
And the other one is if you have court-ordered child support or alimony and you get behind on that, they'll come after your Social Security.
Got it.
Tina, I think I said it backwards. They leave you the last 2 months of Social Security.
Okay.
But any older payments in that account, they will grab.
Got it. Okay. All right. So I know there's some special rules around marriage and divorce. Can you share that with my listeners?
Yes, because this is so important if you're considering either a marriage or divorce. Okay. There's some caution lights that come up. So first of all,
there's a lot of things you got to do when you're considering your finances when you're talking about marriage or divorce. This is just one more thing to add to that checklist.
You're right. Social Security is probably down on the list, but not maybe at top of mind. First of all, you can get former spouse payments if you were married at least 10 years. That means your final divorce is not until after your 10th anniversary.
Okay.
So if you're planning a divorce at 9 years and 9 months or something like that, postpone on the paperwork until the 10th anniversary goes by, because later you might really want those payments as an ex-spouse.
Okay.
That goes both during the life and after the death of your ex. So keep that door open. And be careful with remarriage. If you're planning a marriage and you are getting Social Security payments as a widow, or you think someday you might get them, if you marry before age 60, that blocks that widow's payment.
So if you're 59, hold that marriage off for another 12 months.
Exactly. It's weird how these dates come up, but it sounds weird, but if you're considering marriage or divorce.
And it's one of those, there's certain things, I talk to clients about credit, there's certain things that you can do to your credit that you cannot recover from. So it's all about education. Could you recover from this and get a divorce, and then when you figure it out and then get remarried, or it doesn't work like that?
You could. For example, let's say you're married and you're approaching age 60. And you know that as long as that marriage lasts, you cannot get a widow's payment from your former spouse who passed away, and you want to get that payment, then you might consider getting divorced for 2 weeks or whatever, and then remarrying after age 60.
Yeah, there's definitely been some strategic divorces that I've heard about. So, Andy, we've talked about Social Security receiving it, being eligible in more than one way. Can you talk about that?
Yes, if you're eligible as a worker and as, say, a spouse or as a widow, then you might choose your pathway carefully. You might get more money from Social Security by taking one kind of payment first and then later detouring back to your own payment.
Okay, got it.
Good to look at.
A minute here before we're going to wrap up the show, Andy, and I think a good place to wrap up my time with you on Social Security is, what is Social Security worth to the average worker? Can you break down some numbers for my listeners?
Yeah, the average person at 66 gets about $1,300 a month. You'd need at least $400,000 to match that. And if you throw a spouse in there, you'd need $650,000 to equal what you're going to get for the average person from Social Security.
Jeez.
That's pretty good. So you really need to think about it as an asset that you're going to take care of carefully.
Yeah, great point. Well, Andy, thank you so much again for spending the entire show with me. I just love having you in studio and just really the expert for the show in anything regarding Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid. I highly encourage to get onto Amazon and purchase Andy's books. Andy, tell them where to go, what to buy.
Go to Amazon, look for Landis Social Security. The name of the book is Social Security, The Inside Story.
And Andy, we'll have you back real soon, I'm sure. And happy birthday. I want to get you out of here, out of studio, so you can go enjoy the festive time that you have planned with your lovely wife. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Tina. Great to be here.
This is your host and mortgage expert, Tina Mitchell, signing off for the day. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. Thanks again for spending time this hour with me for the Money Hour. And I will be here same time, same place, right here at 11:50 a.m. KKNW.